I am so not happy with how this live is down there by my thumb. And I still need tape.
It's alright, it's building an audience.
Oh my gosh, well they're still going to be listening, so talk to them for a little bit.
Hi guys, how are ya?
Oh my God, help me out here. I got
Happy
one hand.
Thursday. We are live a little sooner than we thought we were going to be.
I was really doing well here. This is very important to make
Our
sure
painter's tape, yeah.
that sticks and doesn't fall. It might fall still.
Yep, we're good. I don't have the top of the head,
Okay,
but
hold
that's
on.
cool. That's
Hold on.
cool.
Well, if you weren't sitting so high up in a chair. Okay. It's got a little lowrider over here. Oh my gosh. Okay,
right.
we have a topic today, don't we?
We do.
Sorry guys, that was a little fast. Anyway, hey, everybody, we're recording. Didn't even get to holler that, but I guess I already know. Anyway, so.
Shh, Stacy, be quiet. Just kidding. Now I want to yell.
Over there. Okay, listen guys, we just want to take a little bit of time today. We've been having I want to call it a deep conversation. Is it deep?
It got deep, yeah.
I don't know if it was deep. I think it was important conversation about what great teachers do when kids are one and done, halfway finished, or they're not really super excited, because our default, and maybe it's just my default, maybe y'all have better defaults than I have, but originally, before I learned how to be a better teacher, the default is, hey, get to work, hey, pay attention, hey, and to be over there and be on top of them and just, that sort of thing. But I don't think that's what a great teacher does. I think that's what a stereotypical teacher does. Is it okay to say that?
Yeah, and I think there's another default. I think one default is to jump on them and say, oh, get to work, pay attention, work harder, work smarter, whatever, on top of them like that. And there's the other default of, oh, they don't like this. This isn't for us. They're not engaged. This is a bad lesson. This isn't going well. This isn't going to work. This isn't working. This isn't working. Let's stop it. And I think there's two sides of that.
Yeah. For better, for worse. For better, for worse.
Sometimes it is time to stop.
Sometimes catch a clue. That's right. But we decided we wanted to get a little more pointed, a little more intentional with this. And so we made up a little list. And so when you see us looking down here, it's because I have short attention. You probably remember all this, but did we have this conversation already? So what are the habits? What are the dispositions? What are the things that great teachers do when their kids aren't deeply into it? What do we do? And I think, first of all, the first thing, even before they're even into it, even before you start, we all know that a teacher's enthusiasm is a huge temperature builder of the room. Help me out with that. With a climate builder. That when I walk in excited about what we're doing today, my kids can't help but be excited too. If I come in, I'm like, okay guys, this is really hard work today, or I know they're not going to like it, then you're almost self-prophesying. Is that the word? I'm not good with words today.
Self-prophesizing? I don't know. Me neither. You're making it happen. You're saying, you're preempting it. You're having a negative presupposition rather than a positive presupposition.
Right. So that enthusiasm from the get-go is, number one. It's gotta be there, particularly if it's going to be a hard day for yourself or for the kids. Is to swallow it and say, okay, let's jump in, almost to a cheerleader style. Not fake, but real enthusiasm for you.
And sometimes you fake it till you make it, because sometimes it's hard for you. So you find the piece that's going to be exciting. What is the challenge? What's the lesson that students are going to learn, maybe not content-wise, but personally, by experiencing whatever it is you're giving them. And get excited about that. But you have to bring something to the table. You can't walk in and, today we're going to build something.
I'm already asleep. Right? When our kids' brains, whether we like it or not, how they're being continually stimulated. Whether you like it or not, it is what's happening. So then how are we going to reflect that? How are we going to capture that and bring them back into something deeper where they can think deeper rather than just surface, flash. And we've got to capture them first. So that's a big piece, and obviously that's an obvious one. Another one we want to talk about.
You can't be afraid to not have the answer. So there's going to be, I mean, daily in my career, I didn't.
Are you telling us you don't know stuff?
I don't know anything. I'm a fraud. No.
I wouldn't say that.
Right. I'm not. I'm really smart. But there are a lot of times I don't have the exact precise answer. And you have to admit that to kids. They're not going to walk around with all the answers in life either. And thankfully we live in a world now where we carry around a lot of the answers in our pocket in a nice little handy device. So if you don't know something, that shouldn't be an intimidation fact for you, because you have that resource right there. So say, I don't know, let's find out together. Or, I'm wondering what we should think about in this situation. What questions could we ask to dig a little deeper and figure this out? But being the expert in the room is no longer your job.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal, particularly for those of us who are secondary trained, because we were trained as experts in the content. And then to say, I don't know, it's easier said than done. It's easier to say, well, yeah, I don't pretend to know everything. Of course I don't. But then we get in the classroom and behave how? I'm just asking people to self-reflect for a moment on that one. It's a scary place, because then kids say, oh, you're stupid. My favorite thing is to, on things that I definitely know the answer to this, I'll pretend like I don't, and the kids are like, she totally knows the answer to this. And then there'll be times where I really don't know, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, and I say the same sorts of things. They're like, she just wants us to work. Yeah, I do. But then I've got to pay attention very closely, which kind of leaks into our third one and fourth one. Is that there are times, I'm just going to smash them all together, here we go. There are times where they will ask questions that I really don't know, and they're really struggling to find an answer. I just roll up my sleeves, get shoulder to shoulder with them, and I don't know, let's really work this out. And so when I struggle right next to them, it puts a different relationship between the two of us, a different form of respect with the two of us, or the three, or the however many there happen to be there, where we're like, I don't know, this is a rough one, but it's important, isn't it? Role modeling being a learner.
I think a lot of times in those circumstances too, when I do start to sit down and dig in with them, I'm able to start making connections faster than they are, because I have more life experiences. I used to always tell my kids, you very well might be smarter than I am. I mean, that's possible, but
I never tell my children that.
I still know more than you. I've had more life experiences to connect things to. So, maybe when you start digging in, you're like, oh, this is like, and you can start to share some of that experience to help them build those connections. Because while you might not have the answer right away, likely there's something that you've experienced that's there. Yeah. So you have to be willing to then yourself announce those connections and share your knowledge in a way that seems peer-to-peer. Rather than, what is it you say, guide on the side, what is it you kind of...
Meddler in the middle.
Meddler in the middle. That's kind of what it is. You're there, and you bring it in when it's appropriate.
Well, and I want us to remember that Katie particularly looks at this from an elementary point of view. From a secondary teacher's point of view, I don't want to say, hey, I want to make this connection for us. I want to say, when else have you experience this similar sort of thing? And I want them to learn to start to make their connections, because starting 5th, 6th, 7th grade, they can do that. They've just never done it. They've never tried to, because we've never let them or asked them to. But maybe as youngers, we kind of need to help them, walk them.
One of the things sometimes in the lower grades, you do say that. You say, I'm making a connection here to when have you ever experienced something like that before? So you kind of model it in the beginning, and then you give them a chance to connect to it.
Well, and that'd be good for a secondary who's not used to doing that as well. Otherwise, they're going to look at you like, eh. and tune out. So that means that we have to not just not have the answer, but kind of have a hands-off approach to them doing the work. And when they're actually building or constructing things, or even working on their computers, hands-off is a really good thing.
That's tricky. I mean, there are so many times where I want to save. I do have an answer, and I do see, just if you would just, and I want to, and you can't. Take the pen. I mean, how many times have you seen it? You take the pencil out of the kid's hand, you've taken all of the power away. You've essentially said, you can't do this. And that's not true. So how do we find that middle point there, where your hands are off, but you're still guiding in the right way. And sometimes it is asking permission.
So I had a college class. It was chemistry for majors. I was failing the lecture part. I think I had like a 2%. People were asking, I'm not kidding about this, and I'm in, and there were people in the classroom asking questions. I didn't even understand what the question was, let alone I mean, I was so lost. But in the lab, where we were hands-on, I loved it because I would go up to the professor and I'd say, I just don't get this. And he would take my stuff and do it for me and be like, you got that? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And then go back to my lab and kind of struggle a little bit more and come back and ask him more. Pretty soon he's done all my work and I'm making top grades in the lab.
You're sneaky.
I ended up dropping the class anyway because obviously I couldn't pass the lecture, nor really the lab. But the idea is that we as educators are so hardwired to help people that sometimes we hinder by doing that. Anytime a kid, or even now when I'm working with teachers, they're like, well, how do I do that on the computer? And they just turn their computer to me. And I'm like, if I'm doing it, I'm the one learning. I'm like, no. But if I have to touch it because we're so close, ooh, can I put my hands on your keyboard for a little bit? I ask permission because then it reminds me to get my hands off as soon as I possibly can.
I often just say, do you want me to show you or do you want me to guide you?
That's respectful.
And then say again, when they say, well, show me, okay, so I can touch your computer, and just kind of ask a couple of times. The hope is that they say, no, guide me, and then the second time, the hope is still there. Because if your hands are on it, you're going to learn it. If mine are, you're not.
Well, it's
not the same way.
It's back to that old thing too, is that each kid is different, and the level of help and the level of intensity of help is different. It's that concept we call optimal ambiguity. It's that I'm not sure how things are going. I'm unsure, so my brain wants to make sense of it, but to let the kids struggle. That ambiguity. That's what struggle is. But then to know that the struggle for her needs to be at a very different style and a very different level than what I might be struggling in, depending on whichever class. And that's the art of teaching, is getting to know the kids and knowing which place to intervene. I love that. That's flavorful.
One of my favorite strategies for a hands-off approach is to think about the questions that I'm going to ask and make sure that they're just nice quality questions that are going to promote thinking and not guide or lead or kind of pinpoint students in figuring something out. But I like to ask the question and then pretend like I've got to go real quick to this other group over here. So just ask a quick question, look for the wheel to start turning, and as soon as they start talking to the group, because what happens is if they're working with a group and I've asked a question, they're going to tell me the answer. I don't want them to tell me the answer. I want them to talk about it. So I wait for them to start talking. I'm like, yeah, it looks like you're getting some great thinking started there, and I'll be back in a minute. And I go over and I help the group over here for a few minutes. I might not even really be talking to them. I might just lean in a little bit and kind of look like I'm talking.
You are sneaky.
And then I go back to the other group again, and typically they figured it out. If they haven't, I ask another question, and I'll be right back. You guys think about that for a second and go over here and do the same thing. So it allows me to stay hands off and not go in and save, because again, it is what I want to do. But it's a better approach than just saying, I don't know, figure it out.
Oh, I hear that all the time with people who are new to PBL or are a little over enthusiastic with PBL, and they're like, I just tell my kids to figure it out. They come up to me with a question, I say, you figure it out. And then that's it. And I thought, whoa, I hate that when I hear that, because there are times when we do need to just say that. Maybe we've got some folks who have got some learned helplessness, and we're trying to, it's almost tossing them into the deep end a little bit, but we've got to realize that sometimes that's not the best approach. Sometimes it should be more caring. And I think that when we ask questions to the kids, like, they'll ask us a question, but they're asking it in such a weird way they can't really think through, because they're coming at it from this way. And if we rephrase the same question in a different way, what we're doing is role modeling what good questions could be. And so then they learn to ask better questions of themselves without us. I think that's important. What do we have? Our fifth one. I said there were 9. We're already at 5. Already. We've already done that.
I think
we've
done 5.
Okay, that's good. So we're already at 6. I just can't say this enough, and I know you didn't say it was okay for me to add this. We want to have enthusiasm in how we approach the learning. I know I said that as number 1, but I can't say that enough. I think that I get it. it's especially May. We're getting so close to the end of the year, and people are like, oh, we're going to wrap up the year, when the reality is we're running breakneck speed. Or maybe it's October and they're doing craziness with Halloween, or I don't know. There's always some reason why we are just dead beat. And it's true. I'm not saying it's like a legitimate, it is a legitimate reason. And it's tiring. Maybe there was a late night with your own family. Maybe it was an early staff meeting. Maybe it was a parent phone call or email where you're just like, again. But we've got to approach the learning with enthusiasm. Yeah.
That was my enthusiastic face.
Was it? I didn't even see it. I just have to say that.
So then we kind of move on to, when you're enthusiastic, you are going to be modeling that perseverance for students. They're going to want to continue to work for you because they're going to see that this means something. But then kind of understand.
Can I pause right there? Because you said they're going to want to work for you. And I really want to talk about that phrase right there, work for you. In the guru world, they've got some sort of magical elixir somewhere around them that says, oh, kids are going to want to learn for their own benefit. And they do. Eventually, but not always at first, particularly if you're new to the hands-on learning by doing PBL type approach. And so at first they are going to learn for you. And even if they are learning for themselves, a great teacher, you know how it is. The kids fall in love with you, not in a creepy way, in like the really important way. And they are still learning for you too, even if they're learning for themselves eventually. So I don't want to minimize that, because too many people will go like, well, but they should be learning for themselves. Yeah, they should. But the reality is they're learning for you too.
I should work for myself too, but I also work for my boss. I mean, I want to
like
provide high quality work for the people that employ me.
And I want my boss to say, good job, you know? Why not? Oh, thank you. She says it a lot normally, so to both of us.
So you have to kind of know how to balance that perseverance and that work ethic, so that you're pushing them, but you're not pushing so far that it becomes a chore. The learning becomes a chore. You want them to stay enthusiastic themselves in the learning, that the learning doesn't become torturous.
There is a point where it is a struggle. So that's where we have to say, hey, you got to take a break. You got to take a brain break, go for a walk, take a run up and down the stairs, you know, or do whatever you need to do. I say that one in particular because we did that in my school, is kids would take a lap around the stairs with their eyes open. They'd know not to run into people, but it'd be funny. People would walk into the school and be like, there's children running in the hallways. But it was not just willy-nilly. It was them saying, oh, I got to get some energy out because I'm really working hard here.
Restroom break. Let them go to the bathroom to get a drink, take a walk, go sit in the corner and read for a few minutes.
Water on the face.
Put their head down. You know, sometimes I'd ask myself that a lot in the class. If I'd see kids who had at one point been engaged in the work and they were moving really fast, and then all of a sudden everybody's sitting like this and their head's on the table. It's not that they're disengaged because it's boring or it's too tough, or it's that we need a mental break. There are a lot of times that your brain just feels like it's suddenly going to explode.
That's right.
Recognize that moment. Teach your kids to recognize that moment.
That's important.
So that they know that when I hit this point, it's not because I'm going to fail. It's not because I need to give up. It's because I need to take time to process what's happening and then get started again.
Particularly a lot of our kids who are particular, they will reach that point of first, and then they get really, really hard on themselves. And the brain starts saying how dumb they are, how they're an imposter, or when really all they got to do is just get up and move for a minute. We used to have dance breaks.
They're always fun.
Well, I did this 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We would I'd put on some weird music they'd never heard before. The kids learned ELO, some Mr. Blue Sky, and we'd dance around a little bit to that, and they fell in love with that, and they became like a song on a commercial eventually, but whatever.
And another way to combat that moment is to celebrate those small wins throughout. Have that same enthusiasm that you would have if they had just, really accomplished a moonshot. But all of those little tiny steps in between are really important as well. And that's what leads up to the perseverance, to be able to hold that learning for that long.
And keeping that energy high throughout. So even if I have a kid who didn't, it's not a big deal of okay, great. You finally got focused, you're in there, and you found out that one piece of information. Good. I've been asking you to do that for all year long, and you finally did it. Good job. No. It's, oh my God, look at you. It's a huge high five. It's a huge big deal. It seems fake. It seems weird, but it needs to be recognized around the classroom that that kid is coming forward. And that kid needs to hear and feel that positive. It can't be just like, huh, good, finally. Now, I know that that's almost a hyperbole, but it's not really, because I'm in classrooms and I see it happening even today, where people are like, well, finally that kid came along. Wow! I mean, you mean to say, finally, awesome, good job, kid.
I'm proud of you.
It matters.
Nice
Again,
work.
with the boss saying, good job, it matters. You're that boss again. What do we have? Our last one?
Yeah, we're at 9.
The questions we're asking kids as they're diving in. The question, not just, why was the war of blah, blah, blah. Not just the content questions, but the questions to make them think, to consider, to ponder. Seems to be, just right off the top of our heads, 3 that we really want to classify. I'm sure some other brain out there has come up with a list of different types of questions. In fact, I know they have. But right now we're going to talk about probing questions, prompting questions, not the same, and processing questions. Those probing questions, those are the ones that are taking the kids deeper into, that's really great that you thought about it that way. What else? That peeling away the onion layers, and why? And why? And what do you think caused that? And how come those sorts of probing questions that make them actually get into the content rather than just surface level stuff, as opposed to prompting questions.
Right, so those are the ones that do lead just a little bit further. You're trying to help them see a goal. You're trying to help them identify something that they're missing, and so it has more of a direct answer. It's you're not giving the direct answer. Your question's not leading, but you're pushing to a point rather than uncovering something.
I do that a lot when we're talking about Google. So the kids are asking me a question. I can't find the blah blah blah, and so then I will say, I'll rephrase the question into a more Googleable form. Basically, I'm telling them what to Google, and I say, try that one. Now that's prompting. I'm not giving them an answer, even though I am giving them an answer. It's prompting. And it's okay to give kids some of that next step answer. I don't want to play guess the teacher's mind. I don't want to play, I don't know, you can't figure it out, we'll figure it out. Sometimes they need a little shove over that hurdle, a little foot up, so they can keep moving. Otherwise, they'll just keep bouncing, and eventually they'll just bounce away because they're done. And then that processing question. You're better at those.
I think my starting point for processing questions is always to, a lot of times, to help them think about their own process themselves. I don't know what's going on in their head. So when they tell me I don't know, or I can't, or this isn't working, then just asking, so what have you tried?
Yep.
What have you tried? And then, well, I tried blah, blah, blah. So what might your next step be? I don't know. Okay, so here's my favorite question for that. And it's silly, but it works really well. If you did know, what might you do?
You have used that on me.
I've used it a lot.
Drives me crazy. Yeah, this isn't going to work.
I don't know.
But if it did,
what might that look like? And they'll feed at you for forever. I don't know. But if you did, and almost every time, they'll come up with something. A movement will happen. Will it be the right choice every single time? No. But then you get to ask it again. So that didn't work. What might you try next?
It's moving past that hurdle.
And so if you can't think of if you don't know the process, and if you can't think of really great questions to ask, that one is going to put that in your little toolbox, and it's going to work for you the majority of the time. It's that open language. What might you try? It's telling the kids that there is something that I could do. I can think of it. It's just fun. It's just fun to watch their little brains want to. I don't know. Just tell me, and they just realize quickly she's not going to give me an answer.
Yeah, it's annoying too from our point of view when she asks us that, but it works. It worked, and I know it has worked with me, and I know she's messing with me. It's like when the psychologist asks you that question, and how does that make you feel? You can fight against it, or you can say, well, all right, it feels this way. Or if you did, all right, I know you're messing with me. Okay, well, if I did, maybe I could do this. Maybe
And what's magical about it is that each year that I did this, eventually at some point in the year, I would have kids come up and say, so I was really struggling with something and I couldn't figure it out and you were busy, so I just sat there and I asked myself, what would Mrs. Perez say? Well, if you did know, what might you do? And eventually I came up with the answer of my own. So it's really models for them. That monologue that should be happening in their head.
Absolutely.
And then I don't have to ask that question anymore.
I would do this a lot at the secondary level too. I will hear, it's not working, or it doesn't, this isn't like, if, like again with the computer. It's just, that's a simple one. Well, it doesn't work. I would look at him and go, it doesn't work. You just said a statement to me. Did you want to ask me a question? Is there something? See, and think about it. I want you to think about this next time you're teaching, is how many times do kids come to us and give a statement, and then we just jump in to help them? They've never once asked a question. They didn't ask for help. They didn't, and I know it seems like a little teeny tiny little thing, but unless they start to think of what the question should be, they'll never be able to find out the right answers. They're just waiting for us to jump in. So catch yourself. Well, this is the wrong color. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question? Did you want to ask me something? And then, well, it's the wrong color. Okay. Well, should I use this one? I don't know. Why do you think that one might work? Why did you challenge yourself to see if you can see how far into the class period you can get asking only questions? Or if you had to make a statement, keep track of how many statements you actually made and see if you can get through a whole class period making less than 10 statements, or 5 statements, or 3.
I'm going to try that.
I did that in a workshop one time.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking of. How could I do that in my next workshop?
Yeah, so I was in Dodge City, actually, and it was day 2, and it was a big reflection time, and I leaned over to 2 of the teachers and said, every time I make a statement, I want you to make a mark. And they were like, yeah? And I said, yep. I said, I'm just going to do this. And I got through 3 hours, and I made 5 statements. I was just like, okay, it's it. We just got to talk now. But that was all the farther I could make it sustain. And and half of them didn't even notice that I was doing it.
Very powerful.
I was impressed. That's the only time I've ever been able to go that long. It's just testimony to the teachers out in Dodge. It's not easy to do. Anyway, these are some things that I think we all know. I mean, none of this is like groundbreaking, right? It's just that in the heat of the moment, we forget. And I find that the best way is to have a colleague watching me. And then it helps me catch my own problems or my own, oh, I knew better. Or if I coach another, because teachers are good at teaching, and so if I'm invited into, say, your space, your classroom, and I'm looking for these things, then it helps me get better too. Have you ever corrected somebody on their grammar before, and then pretty soon you didn't have that grammar problem anymore? No?
Never. The last time I made a mistake was the last time I thought I made a mistake. Just kidding.
She's not kidding. I heard her say that the other day. Anyway.
And this is kidding then too.
Oh, she had made a mistake. Yeah, anyway, I have no idea how long this video has been. Well, there's no way to tell. What is, as my husband would say, no one can say. No one can say. So just saying, thanks for listening, and double check yourself on these things, because we may or may not have had a recent incident with working with a couple of groups of kids and a couple of groups of teachers, where one group of kids was just like, wow, and they were in, and the other group of kids weren't. And I can't help but think that it was a direct reflection of the teachers' attitudes as they came into the room. And and by the way, if you think this is you, it wasn't. Anybody who's watching. It wasn't. As far as you know, it's hypothetical. This never really happened. I'm lying. Made a scenario. So that's where we're at. Dawn, thank you for saying, giving a comment. I appreciate that. By the way, my cousin, who's not a teacher, is like totally was in here too. So shout out to Dee, and I love it. I love it. Valuable info. I think we're done.
Yeah.
We're good.
I think just keep in mind the energy that you bring to your classroom is the energy that you'll get out of it. So next time you feel it sinking a little low, Instead of projecting that onto kids, say, what can I do in this moment? I'm the decisive element in this classroom. What can I do right now to
pivot,
to bring things back up?
Absolutely. Well, Janine, thanks for coming in. We're signing off. So it says nothing to luck. All these people.
Janine.
Oh gosh, guys. Well, enjoy the pre-play or the replay.
Bye.
Bye.